The untamable terror captain, Marcus Kane, stood before the massive containment chamber, aboard the Galactic Defense Station Omega-7, watching humanity's greatest mistake pace behind reinforced energy barriers. The creature they called Devastator measured 30 meters from snout to tail, its obsidian scales rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a dying star. Originally designed by the Corvanian Empire as the ultimate bioweapon, it had turned on its creators with such savage efficiency that 3-star systems fell. Before anyone understood what had happened, the beast possessed intelligence that bordered on terrifying, strength that could tear through battleship hulls, and an aggression that made rabid space sharks look cuddly. For 6 months, it had been humanity's prisoner, captured during the Battle of Proxima Centauri, when human forces had stumbled upon a drifting Corvanian research vessel. The Empire had abandoned their creation after losing control, leaving it to drift in space like a ticking bomb. Dr. Natasha Volkov approached the observation deck, her weathered face showing the strain of countless sleepless nights. She had been studying the creature since its capture, trying to understand its neural patterns and biological functions. Every test, every attempt at communication had failed spectacularly. The beast recognized no authority, acknowledged no master, and responded to every interaction with calculated violence. Still nothing, Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer from her expression. It's learning, Natasha replied, her Russian accent thick with exhaustion. Every day, it becomes more efficient at breaking our containment protocols. The AI systems can barely keep up with its adaptations. 3 more days, maybe 4, and it will find a way out. Through the transparent aluminum barrier, the Devastator suddenly stopped pacing and turned its massive head toward them. Its eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, glowed with an intelligence that made Marcus's skin crawl. The creature had never shown direct interest in observers before. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, the station's youngest tactical officer, joined them at the observation window. He had been tracking the beast's behavioral patterns, looking for weaknesses that might help them understand how to contain it permanently. What he had discovered instead was deeply troubling. "Captain," Jake said, pulling up a holographic display of the creature's recent activities, "I've been analyzing its movement patterns. It's not just randomly testing the barriers anymore. It's mapping our entire defensive grid, learning our response times, studying our personnel rotations." The implications hit Marcus like a cold slap. The beast wasn't just trying to escape. It was planning something far more sophisticated. As if sensing their realization, the Devastator pressed one massive claw against the barrier and dragged it slowly downward, creating a sound like grinding metal that echoed through the observation deck. "How long before the Corvanian fleet arrives to reclaim their pet?" Marcus asked. 48 hours, Natasha answered grimly. "And when they do, this creature will become their weapon again. Only now it knows everything about our defenses." The Whisperer Arrivest transport ship Meridian docked with Omega-7, carrying an unusual passenger who would change everything. Emma Castellanos stepped onto the station with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent her life communicating with beings that others considered impossible to reach. Her reputation preceded her across 3 sectors as the xenobiologist who could speak to any creature, no matter how alien or hostile. Emma's approach differed fundamentally from traditional xenobiology, where others saw monsters and weapons. She saw complex beings driven by needs, fears, and desires that could be understood with patience and empathy. Her methods had resolved conflicts with crystal-based hive minds, negotiated treaties with sentient gas clouds, and even convinced a planet-sized organism to relocate rather than consuming a populated world. "You're wasting your time," Dr. Volkov informed her during their first meeting. "This creature responds only to violence. It has killed 17 researchers from various species, destroyed every communication device we've introduced, and shows no interest in any form of peaceful interaction." Emma studied the behavioral reports with careful attention, noting patterns that others had dismissed as random aggression. To her trained eye, the beast's actions told a different story. The killings had been precise, targeted at specific types of researchers. The destroyed equipment had been particular models, not random destruction. The creature was making choices, expressing preferences, communicating in ways that no one had bothered to interpret. Captain Kane granted her permission to observe the beast directly, though he positioned security teams at every possible exit. Emma approached the containment chamber alone, carrying nothing but a simple recording device and years of experience reading the subtle languages of fear, anger, and desperation. The Devastator noticed her immediately, rising from its resting position to study this new human. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor directly in front of the barrier, making herself small and non-threatening. She didn't speak, didn't move aggressively, didn't try to analyze or probe. She simply observed and listened with senses trained to detect communication beyond words. Hours passed. The creature circled its enclosure, occasionally pausing to stare at Emma with those massive, intelligent eyes. Other observers grew impatient, suggesting that she was accomplishing nothing. But Emma recognized the signs of a mind trying to decide whether to trust, weighing the risks of vulnerability against the desperate need for understanding. Lieutenant Morrison joined the observation, bringing data about the creature's neural activity. Brain scans show unusual patterns when you're present, he reported, different from its normal state or its aggressive responses to other researchers. Emma nodded without taking her eyes off the beast. It's thinking, she said simply. Really? Thinking, not just reacting. Something about our interaction is different. As the station's artificial night cycle began, most personnel retired to quarters. Emma remained at her post, maintaining her patient vigil. The creature settled into a resting position, but kept its eyes fixed on her. In the dim lighting, its bioluminescent patterns shifted to softer, more rhythmic pulses. What are you trying to tell me? Emma whispered to herself, studying the light patterns with growing fascination. They weren't random displays of emotion or aggression. They were structured, purposeful, almost like language. She breathed, suddenly understanding what she was seeing. First Contact Protocol. Emma spent the next 18 hours documenting the Devastator's bioluminescent patterns, cross-referencing them with its physical movements, vocalizations, and behavioral changes. What emerged was unmistakably a complex communication system that had been dismissed as mere biological functions. The creature had been trying to communicate from the moment of its capture, but no one had recognized its language. Dr. Volkov joined her research reluctantly, her scientific curiosity overcoming her skepticism. Together, they identified recurring pattern sequences that seemed to correspond with specific emotional states or environmental changes. The beast grew more animated as it realized they were paying attention to its displays, its patterns becoming more elaborate and urgent. Look at this sequence. Emma pointed to a recording from the previous night. It repeats every time someone mentions the Corvanian Empire in its presence. And here, this rapid flashing pattern occurs whenever it detects weapon signatures or aggressive postures from security personnel. The implications became clear as they analyzed more data. The creature possessed not only intelligence but emotional depth, showing signs of trauma, anger, and something that looked remarkably like grief. Its violent responses weren't mindless aggression, but defensive reactions born from pain and abandonment. Captain Kane reviewed their findings with growing amazement and concern. You're telling me this thing has been trying to talk to us for 6 months and we've been treating it like a rabid animal more than talk, Emma corrected. It's been trying to explain what the Corvanians did to it, warn us about their intentions, and request help. Lieutenant Morrison pulled up tactical displays showing the approaching Corvanian fleet. If it wants to help us, we need to know what it knows about their capabilities. The fleet heading our way is 3 times larger than our defensive forces. Emma returned to the containment chamber with new purpose, carrying a portable holographic projector. She began displaying simple geometric patterns and color sequences, attempting to establish a basic communication protocol. The Devastator responded immediately, its own patterns becoming more controlled and deliberate. Progress came slowly but steadily. Basic concepts like agreement, negation, danger, and safety became established through patient repetition and observation. The creature demonstrated remarkable learning ability, quickly grasping new symbolic relationships and building upon established meanings. The breakthrough came when Emma displayed tactical readouts of the approaching Corvanian fleet, the Devastators. Response was immediate and intense, its patterns flashing with what could only be described as desperate urgency. It began transmitting complex sequences that included detailed structural information about Corvanian ship designs, weapon capabilities, and tactical preferences. "It's giving us intelligence," Morrison realized, his excitement barely contained. "Ship classifications, defensive weaknesses, command hierarchies. This creature knows everything about their military capabilities." But the most important revelation came when Emma asked about the creature's origins. The story that emerged through careful translation of bioluminescent language was heartbreaking. The Devastator hadn't been created as a weapon. It had been a peaceful deep space entity, captured and tortured into becoming the Corvanians' perfect killer through months of psychological conditioning and biological modification. "They broke it," Emma whispered, understanding the depth of the creature's trauma. "Turned it into something it never wanted to be. And when it finally broke free of their control, they abandoned it rather than face what they had created." The creature's patterns shifted to something Emma had learned to recognize as profound sadness. In that moment, she realized that the Devastator wasn't humanity's enemy or the Corvanians' weapon. It was a victim, trapped by circumstances beyond its control, desperate for someone to understand its pain and offer a chance at redemption. The Alliance Formed Station's command center buzzed with activity as Emma translated the Devastators' intelligence about the approaching Corvanian fleet. The tactical information was incredibly detailed, revealing weaknesses in ship designs and command structures that human forces had never suspected. But more importantly, the creature was offering something unprecedented. An Alliance Captain Kane struggled to process the implications. "You're telling me it wants to fight alongside us against its former masters?" Emma nodded, reviewing the complex light patterns that had taken hours to fully understand. "It's not just about revenge, though that's certainly part of it. The creature sees humanity as different from the Corvanians. We captured it but didn't torture it. We studied it but didn't try to break its mind. It recognizes that we have the capacity for mercy." Dr. Volkov remained skeptical despite the mounting evidence. "How can we trust something that was designed to be the perfect killer? What's to stop it from turning on us once the Corvanians are defeated?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Morrison had been analyzing the creature's behavioral patterns from a tactical perspective, looking for signs of deception or hidden aggression. What he found instead was something that shook his understanding of military psychology. The creature showing signs of what we'd call battle trauma in human soldiers, he reported. Every time it's forced to use its combat capabilities, its stress indicators spike dramatically. It doesn't want to be a weapon anymore. Fighting causes it genuine psychological pain. Emma returned to the containment chamber with a proposal that would have seemed insane just days earlier. She carried a remote control for the barrier systems and a portable communicator connected to the station's main systems. The Devastator watched her approach with patterns that had become familiar expressions of curiosity and hope. "We need your help," Emma said aloud while displaying corresponding light patterns through her equipment. "But we won't force you to fight. If you choose to help us, it will be as our ally, not our weapon." The creature's response was immediate and complex, patterns flowing across its scales in sequences that Emma had learned indicated deep consideration. It was weighing the offer, understanding the distinction between being used and choosing to act. After several minutes, the Devastator moved to the center of its containment cell and began a display. Unlike anything Emma had seen before, the patterns were intricate, beautiful, and unmistakably ceremonial. Through careful translation, she realized she was witnessing something equivalent to a formal oath or commitment ceremony. "It's accepting," she breathed into her communicator, "but it's setting conditions. It will fight to protect innocence and defend those who show mercy. It won't participate in aggressive actions or attacks on non-combatants." Captain Kane made a decision that would echo through military history. Open the containment barrier. The energy field that had held the Devastator for 6 months flickered and died. For a moment, nothing happened. The creature remained motionless, as if unable to believe its freedom. Then, Slowly, it approached the barrier threshold and stepped into the observation chamber. Emma stood her ground as 30 meters of bioengineered predator moved toward her. The creature stopped just out of arm's reach and lowered its massive head in what was unmistakably a gesture of respect and gratitude. Its patterns pulsed with gentle, warm colors that needed no translation. "Welcome to the team," Emma whispered. Reaching out to touch the creature's scaled snout, the contact sent a shock through both beings. A moment of true interspecies connection that transcended the barriers of biology and origin. The Devastator's first act as humanity's ally was to provide detailed tactical plans for countering the Corvanian assault. Its knowledge of their psychology and military doctrine proved invaluable as the station's defenders prepared for battle, but more importantly, its presence sent a message that would spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity possessed something that the Corvanians had lost: the ability to transform enemies into allies through understanding and compassion. The command that changed everything. The Corvanian fleet arrived at Omega 7, expecting to reclaim their lost weapon and crush the human defenders with overwhelming force. Admiral Zexter, commanding from his flagship Inevitable Dominion, had brought sufficient firepower to reduce the station to debris within minutes. What he found instead challenged every assumption about human military capabilities. The battle began conventionally enough. Human defenders launched their fighters and positioned their ships in standard defensive formations while the Corvanians deployed their superior numbers and advanced weaponry. For the first hour, the engagement followed predictable patterns, with human forces giving ground steadily under the relentless assault. Then Emma's voice crackled across all communication channels, speaking a single word in the Devastator's bioluminescent language: rise. The creature that had been humanity's prisoner and was now their ally erupted from the station's docking bay with a roar that shattered the composure of every Corvanian in the fleet. But this wasn't the mindless berserker they remembered. The Devastator moved with purpose and precision, targeting specific ship systems with surgical accuracy. Rather than unleashing indiscriminate destruction, Admiral Zexter watched in horror as his perfect weapon systematically dismantled his fleet's command structure. The creature knew exactly where to strike each vessel to disable weapons without destroying life support, how to neutralize communications arrays while leaving escape pods functional. It fought with the efficiency of its original design, but tempered by humanity's influence toward mercy. Impossible. Zexter breathed as his tactical display showed Corvanian ships surrendering rather than being destroyed. The conditioning was absolute. Nothing could break our control. But Emma understood what the Corvanians never had. The Devastator hadn't been broken by their conditioning. It had been temporarily overwhelmed by pain and desperation. Given the choice between destruction and cooperation, the creature chose a path its creators never imagined possible. The battle's turning point came when the Devastator reached Zexter's flagship. Instead of tearing through the hull as expected, the creature positioned itself directly in front of the bridge and began a light display visible to every ship in both fleets. The patterns were unlike anything in its communication repertoire. Beautiful and terrible in their complexity. Emma translated the message for both sides. No more. Choose differently. Faced with their perfect weapon turned peacemaker, the Corvanian fleet found itself without options. Their greatest strength had become their most profound weakness, not through violence, but through the demonstration of an alternative they had never considered. Admiral Zexter, career military officer of a conquest-focused empire, made a decision that would reshape galactic politics. He ordered his fleet to stand down. The aftermath of the Battle of Omega 7 sent shockwaves throughout known space. Humanity had not only survived an assault by the galaxy's most feared empire, but had done so by transforming their enemy's greatest weapon into an ally. Through nothing more complicated than listening and offering respect, the Devastator, given the choice of names, selected one that reflected its new purpose: Guardian. It remained with human forces not as a weapon, but as a protector, using its capabilities to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. Its presence became a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to see potential for good in even the most unlikely places. Emma continued her work as an interspecies communicator, but now with a reputation that opened doors throughout the galaxy. The method she had used with Guardian became standard protocol for first contact situations, emphasizing understanding over domination. Captain Kane found himself promoted to Admiral, tasked with implementing new policies based on the Guardian protocols. The single word that had changed everything, rise, became humanity's unofficial motto, representing their commitment to lifting others up rather than tearing them down. The beast that had obeyed no one had found something worth obeying, not commands born of fear or domination, but requests made with respect and trust. In choosing to rise above its conditioning, Guardian had shown the galaxy that even the most impossible transformations were possible, given the right catalyst. And sometimes, that catalyst was nothing more than a human willing to whisper one word of encouragement to a creature that had forgotten how to hope.